I guess we'll go ahead and get started. Good afternoon. First of all, I want to say thank you so much to everybody who came out here this afternoon to join us. I want to thank the Ethiopian Community Mutual Association for helping with the logistics and arrangements and all. Also the Puget Sound Adopted Families Group, which was remarkably and wonderfully supportive. Really appreciate it. And again, especially thank you so much to each of you for coming out this afternoon. Hopefully you're in the right place, which is the workshop between myself, Maureen McCauley, and my daughter, Asela Fetch. So today we're going to talk about perspectives, our two different perspectives in some ways, of Asela Fetch and of mine regarding adoption from Ethiopia, transracial adoption issues, and kind of a whole range of issues, particularly focusing on our journey, on Asela Fetch's journey in particular. We're going to present for somewhere probably about 45 minutes or so, and then my hope is that we can have a conversation. There's certainly going to be enough subjects that we don't talk about that might be on your mind. There might be things here, of course, that you disagree with, that you feel very differently. Ours is just one family, just one way of doing things, just one approach. I've certainly seen an awful lot of changes in the world of adoption, both personally and professionally, over the last 25 years, even up till the last several months. So we'll be talking about a lot of different subjects. Really look forward to having conversation and dialogue, group conversation at the end. I'm going to start by talking about some of these things. Asela Fetch is going to chime in along the way, I'm sure, as well. So October 22nd, 1988, Adonich and Asela Fetch were born in Ethiopia. This is, as I say, the 1994 referral photo from our adoption agency, which was Americans for African Adoptions. In '94, I'm pretty sure AFAA was the only agency working in Ethiopia. November 20th, 1994, Adonich and Asela Fetch, at 6 years of age, arrived in the United States. And this is our picture, which I still tease the girls that they came here to the United States and we put them in those hats. But they've come to forgive us since, I think, and I held on to the hats nonetheless. That's our family photo. My sons there are Sean and Christopher, who are now 25 and 22. You blink and your children grow up. Growing up adopted. Certainly, all four kids are adopted in my family, and there are a lot of challenges in being adopted. There are challenges of being in a transracial family, of being obviously adopted. And then, of course, there are the challenges of being adopted at an older age.
I would definitely say we had a pretty normal upbringing. My mom was very involved, parents, so was my father, but a lot of the times, my twin sister Don and I pretty much stood out. Like, Sean and Chris are mixed, so they're biracial, half white and half black. So sometimes, my mom would take us out and, okay, some people would think, okay, well, those boys are clearly mixed. But Adonich and I kind of stood out because we have the distinctive Ethiopian features, high cheekbones, bigger foreheads. And, people would question our family dynamics. And at times it would just be hard for me and my sister to kind of just spend time with our family without people wondering, what's going on here, you guys don't look alike. And it was tough, but as we got older, I think we got more comfortable about answering questions or dismissing some questions, so.
They started school at 6 years old, Matthew Henson Montessori in Landover, Maryland. That's where Asela Fetch grew up. And there were different issues around adoption, around racism, around identity. It was a predominantly black school. The Montessori program was pretty diverse.
I would say the Montessori, my mom put us in Montessori, I would say that was the best transition for us. you know, when we were in kindergarten, basically, we weren't putting any ESOL programs. We kind of just like transitioned into, I guess, I want to say American culture. And Adonis and I, from time to time, would speak Amariña to each other. But we really didn't need ESOL classes because we kind of just like watched people, or at home, our parents would speak to us. And I don't know, Montessori was just a really good like fit for us because it wasn't that you were just sitting at desks. You were interacting with other people. You didn't have to speak English in order to do the work. It was hands-on. So for us, it wasn't really tough. It was a really good transition. And I think it was a good decision my mom made. One
of many in a series, I'm sure, as you'll hear as we go through. I'm going to take that one.
But no, I mean, I would say in elementary school, in about 6th grade, that's when my sister and I really started seeing race as an issue. Because I remember, what was this, 3rd grade with the cupcake incident?
Well, the cupcake incident was 3rd grade.
So, my mom came in. You want to tell her, because I don't really remember it that well.
Sure. I remain traumatized by it, but it's all it's gotten on. It was one of those things where it was birthday, and as you remember, and if you have children who are in elementary school, we make cupcakes, we celebrate the birthday. I was all very excited. I think Selvage and Adonij were turning probably 8 or 9. And I had the cupcakes driving up to the school, and Selvage turned to me and said, you know, Mom, would it be okay if you didn't come in? And quite honestly, I was very hurt at the moment, you know, just like, well, why wouldn't I come in? Why would I come in? It's your birthday. We do this. We do the celebration. We walk around the room. We have cupcakes. But your feeling at that time...
I mean, honestly, I don't even remember that. But so for me, but I do remember, you know, incidents of not really wanting to have my mom around me because everybody would always be like, oh, that's the girl with the white mom. Or like, it was just really tough. So I don't know, like sometimes as I got older, like people would start thinking that I was mixed or something. So like, it would be cool if my mom was around, but my dad better not show around because if he came around, I wouldn't know what to say. But, you know, it was definitely, I was like having 2 of them there at the same time, like always just, people would always turn heads and it was just tough. And I mean, I'm living in Prince George's County, which is pretty much a mixed county, and, but it was still tough to kind of like, for people to kind of see that this is family, this is my family, so they always questioned it and always, I don't know, it was just really tough growing up in terms of race.
For Selvage, the issue was just having to explain. It was her birthday, and why should you have to explain that, yes, I'm adopted, yes, it's my mother is white. I can't get this to go to the next slide, meanwhile. Yeah, thank you. Okay, Adonij Selvage and Hillary Clinton, they did a Disney radio show, so I just wanted to show that. Okay, what did you do?
It's just each person.
Okay. And what is family? And that's the 4 of them, you know, being a family. Middle school was not easy because I had 4 kids in middle school. And I just want a brief round of applause for that. Thank you. Our family joke was that the vice principal had me on speed dial, which I think was true. You know, 2 years in middle school, it's a long 2 years, I'll tell you that. And then the high school. And the high school was kind of a different experience there.
So elementary school and middle school were like where I felt really uncomfortable and just as lost and didn't know where I belong. And like a lot of you kids here actually are really privileged because you have people that look like you. The adoption community here is large. Like growing up, Adonis and I were about like the only adopted people in our community, right? Right, although we had a lot of African Americans, we had a lot of Ethiopians, we had a lot of mixed race families, but absolutely. So we were just kind of weird, I guess. So once we hit Eleanor Roosevelt, which was a really mixed high school, we started like being proud of being Ethiopian and wanting to, you know, like join the Ethiopian Student Association, and we made more Ethiopian friends, and you know, just really started being proud of where we came from. I mean, we were always proud, but it's just now we were like really wanting to hang around other Ethiopians. And this is a picture of kind of all the kids and my granddaughter as well in the family portrait. So that's everybody. Adoption issues is certainly always a part of our daily lives. I want to talk a little bit about images in the media and we'll go on to kind of grief and loss, love and laughter. And one of the things that's certainly been a source of conversation in our home is the impact of media on African adoption and African adoptees. The notion of technology, of privacy, of attitudes,
of trendiness, and that's always been kind of a difficult one.
I mean, Facebook has kind of like, for me, Facebook has changed what adoption really, I don't know, a lot of the times I have Facebook friends and I'm really alarmed at the amount of information they're willing to share about their children without asking their children if it's okay. Like, I mean, I don't know, Facebook and technology has really changed adoption and has really like publicized the child's story, and I don't think that's right, you know, but that's just, personally, that's just what I think.
And you have the example, of course, the precedent that was set in the media around Angelina Jolie and her adoption, or various adoptions, but certainly the publicity that attended that, and the fact that her daughter's birth mother was in the paper and so forth, and that their story was all there. It is kind of the dilemma of adoptees. They are immigrants, yes. They are first-generation Ethiopian Americans. They are Habesha as well. And it's a complicated journey, I think, through language, through food, through family, through culture, through connection to Ethiopia. The girls grew up with Ethiopian American friends. The slide on the right is Azelvech's twin sister Adanich at senior prom. Amazing. But how do many Americans view Ethiopia? There is a painful reality, there's no question about it. The number of children under age 5 who die each year in the United States versus children who die in Ethiopia is quite devastating. There is also, of course, so much beauty, so much history, so much potential that is rarely seen outside of those kind of documentary type issues around Ethiopia and its history. The dance, the coffee, the food, the crafts, the jewelry, the clothing, the music, the art, and the athletes, all of those components that we don't hear as much about. There are the roles of race and ethnicity, of being African, of being Ethiopian, of being Ethiopian American, and you talked about identifiable.
I mean, honestly, for me, I felt, okay, I went in like, okay, I wasn't African, because some Africans think that Ethiopians aren't true Africans. And then being Ethiopian, I've never really felt accepted in the Ethiopian community in the sense because I lost language, I didn't have the culture. I mean, my parents did everything. Like, they took us to Ethiopian restaurants, we had books around the house, they exposed us to our culture, and they wanted us to be proud, but I just never felt like I belonged in the Ethiopian community. And it was a constant struggle of like trying to figure out my identity, like who am I, where do I fit? I don't fit nicely in any of those categories. But I think people need to understand that as an Ethiopian, you're going to have conflicts of being black, being African American, and then your ethnicity Ethiopian. Like, people will separate you in those categories, and as an adopted person, you don't fit into any of those.
And the reality of race and ethnicity in the United States, we are a transracial adoptive family, which is a sort of minority. It's the issue of being black, the issue of being African American. The many layers of the skin you're in. We've had a lot of conversations within our family too about the notion of skin tone, light skin, dark skinned. What is beauty? What does media tell us? And who's to say? The issue of hair. It's a political, personal, historical, symbolic, powerful, emotional part of the African American community, and for any particularly, I think, for young girls growing up, but certainly for boys too.
I mean, hair in the African or any like African American community or Ethiopian community is very important. I mean, it's important that you understand your child's texture, what products to use. You know, pick up a magazine, start reading it. I know that I didn't know how to cornrow. My mom taught me how to cornrow, so she can do it. You know, like anybody can really learn to like take care of their child's hair because ours is different. Mine's not similar to my mom's hair, and she took the time. She even took like a course in college.
I took classes,
community college course. And really learn how to add weave and all that. So, you know, hair is very important. I think people need to understand that, like, cutting someone's hair because it's too curly, because it's too hard to take care of, it's just not acceptable to me, or, I don't know. And a lot, like, for me, like, I've had friends where, like, they say the quality of your hair is how, like, how do I say it, like,
the quality of your
parenting is reflected by the hairstyle. I mean, I think that's stupid, but I really do, but that is one of the things that I do have African American friends, and they will sometimes make comments like, why don't white people ever take care of their kids' hair or whatever? If they're going to adopt a child, they need to learn like how to do their hair. And I mean, I don't know, it's controversial, but
it is, but it's an area it's a challenging area of difference. There's no question that, in my mind, is real beauty. I want to talk a little bit about the realities in Selvage, too, of course, about being black in the United States. As a white person, I mean, obviously I had to learn about a lot of these things, but poverty, education, health, crime. According to the Washington Post, for example, a black person in America is 447% more likely to be imprisoned than the average white person, 521% more likely to be murdered, is likely to die 5 years sooner than a white person. And those are just kind of very hard, harsh statistics. It's not all bad news ever. As of 2000, over 9,300 African Americans were attending law school, 50% more than the number of blacks enrolled in 1990. Professional degrees has increased, number of PhDs has increased. Those are all positive statistics. But what do we do as transracial adoptive parents? We acknowledge our children as beloved family members. We acknowledge our children as being a different race, and we recognize that they will be seen as being black by much of the world with whatever joys and challenges that may bring. But it's a very significant part of our reality. White parents raising black children. This was termed cultural genocide by the National Association of Black Social Workers in 1972, which in some ways was a long time ago, but in some ways is not. Can white parents really teach their black children about racism, about racial identity, about racial pride? And I don't have a nice, clean answer for that question, but I think we have to, as white parents, we have to be constantly asking ourselves about that.
And I think, like, the thing, anytime my brothers, my sisters, and I had a question of race or whatever, and I think the important part was that our mom was willing to listen, like, to listen to what we had to say. Not, like, she wouldn't understand, but she empathized and she cared enough to listen. So, like, it's real when your kids are telling you, this is how I feel. You guys can't dismiss it and say, oh, you know, maybe it's not about race. Maybe it's just something else. If somebody really feels as though, like, they're being demonized or whatever because of racial issues, it's very real. And I don't think till, like, you experience it, you really know how it feels. So, I mean, I really commend my mom for listening to us and acknowledging that racism does still exist in some ways. I would say more covert than overt. But it's just important that you guys just listen and kind of just, you know, trust.
Absolutely. We do the best that we can. And that's really all it comes down to as parents. Growing up with memories from another world, what was real? As an older, some of you may have older children when they were adopted, what was real? And certainly there was very much resiliency of coping to create a new American family while still loving the first Ethiopian family. And that, I think, is a constant balance that any adopted person may have, especially an older child from another country. But there was a certain pain of losing language, of losing memories, of losing heritage.
Yeah, I mean, as I lost my language, I felt like I was losing the image of my mother, my biological mother. Like, when I came here and I knew the language, I knew what my mom looked like. As I got older and the language, like, was gone, like, her face started, like, fading. And that was really hard for me because I'm like, how do I not know what my mom looks like? And I didn't have photos. I didn't have anything to kind of like, to look back at, so that was pretty tough.
It was a very painful reality, there's no question. The whole notion of the elusive family tree, when you sort of have memories but you don't really have it. It was always a challenge for children.
I hated family trees. I hated those. Like, our teachers would always make us do it, and it's just like, where do we go? You know, where do we start? Like, I didn't know anything about my biological family at the time. And then, like, you have Maureen and Michael, and you have those names, and then you have Adonich, and they're like, okay, go ahead.
This is one solution that RainbowKids.com has offered as a way to do the family tree. It's always making awareness, and it's an ongoing challenge, an ongoing issue. What about those school projects involving non-existent baby photos also? This was really the earliest photo that we had of the girls. Selvage loves this photo with their missing teeth, and it's one of my favorite pictures along the way, but certainly memories are there, and we imagine. And this is a letter that a Selvage wrote.
This is, okay. Okay. Dear Mom, how are you doing? I miss you very much. I'm 12 years old and I'm in the 6th grade. I go to Matthew Hansen Elementary School and I'm a very good student. I play some sports, soccer, basketball, softball, and swimming. I have 2 brothers here. Can you tell me my sisters and brothers? There, I said hi. I'm about 5 feet tall. Mom, I have some questions. Why did you put me up for adoption? How old are you? What are my brothers and sisters' names? Do I have a middle name? How many kids do you have, including me? How old are my brothers and sisters? Can you send me a picture of my family, my birth family? Mom, I have a great family now. I'm very healthy. This might make you feel bad, but I don't know my language anymore. If I get a picture, that would mean the world to me. I will always love you and miss you. If you have a baby picture of me, can you send it to me? Love, Estella Fetch.
So that was a letter that she wrote when she was in 6th grade, and I think it really sums up kind of the heart of the questions that most adopted kids have. And what are the greatest, most valuable resources of any country? Certainly, they are the children. They are the future. I think this is interesting in terms of the numbers. In 1994, when Adonijah and Selvich were adopted, the State Department issued 54 visas for Ethiopian children. And you see the numbers kind of increase. They're increasing from 2000 to 2006 and so forth. In 2010, the Department of State issues 2,511 visas for Ethiopian children. It's an enormous sea change. And of course, that doesn't include Ethiopian children adopted to Canada, Western Europe, and Australia. Between 1999 and 2003, 572 Ethiopian children came to the United States. Between 2007 and 2011, 10,000. Now, as of March 2011, the processing of adoption has slowed down substantially, which I imagine, thank you, many of you are aware of, because the Ethiopian government has decided to really kind of look at the possibilities of fraud and corruption and trafficking, the role of money in adoptions and so forth, and that's going to create another very big change. Still, there are some 20,000 children from Ethiopia, many of whom are now young adults. And Ethiopia, in any case, remains with us. I'm going to talk a little bit, kind of go through this fairly quickly, about the idea of connections with Ethiopia, with the country of origin. The idea being to create and establish a very real connection with Ethiopia to strengthen more families, with the goal being that fewer children will need adoption. With direct connections, and we'll talk about this, there are many factors to consider. The timing, whose search is it anyway? Our journey at home, as Selvich mentioned, conversations about adoption and about race are and were an important part of our lives, as much as when my children were little as they are now. Each of the children has had a different perspective on the idea of searching for birth family. You want to talk about it, Don?
I mean, I have a twin sister, and she just, I don't know, for a long time, it took me a long time to respect how she felt, because I wanted to go search for my biological family, and I was just like, I have to go look for them. I mean, what do you mean? We're 18, we can do it now. Like, I just felt like they gave us an opportunity. They kind of gave us like a second chance at life. And I'm like, how can you not want to know and want to search? But I was on the end of, I want to go and look. And she was, no, like, this is my family. I'm good. Like, I don't need to go search. Like, it's like opening Pandora's box for her.
And it's the same for your brothers, who
And
were
for my
adopted
brothers
as
too.
babies. And they have no interest in searching whatsoever, and they could do so very easily. Each of my children has always been told that we would support whatever decision they made about searching.
You never
And it is
pushed
a
it
balancing
either.
act. No, we always left it open. After much thought and prayer and conversation with the Selvich, we decided that I would go to Ethiopia to see if the birth family could be contacted. I worked with Children's Home Society and Family Services and their post-adoption services staff, both here in Minnesota and in Ethiopia. And I arrived in Ethiopia on August 13th, 2008. And on August 18th, I met the entire birth family, just about, in Shashemini. I met my daughter's family, brothers, sisters, uncles, and more. We exchanged photos, we talked through translators, we cried with joy, we held hands, we prayed together. I visited the home where my daughters were born, where they spent the first 5 years of their lives, and we attracted, literally, I should say, 200 or 300 people from the area who came to see. So how do we define family? Certainly, that's one way, and certainly this way as well. Two mothers with nothing in common and with everything in common. It was just such an astonishing gift to be able to meet my daughter's mother. The next steps at that point were processing. It was 2008, remember, all this information, discerning what next steps might be, communicating a little bit with the family. And then among the wonders of technology, Facebook changes our lives. And Selvich is upstairs in the house one day. She receives an unsolicited email.
I mean, Like, so I go on Facebook and I basically get this message from my brother Merconin.
Well, this is.
I'm sorry. So this is from Daniel. It says, if you are Adon yourself, who's adopted from Ethiopia, I'm your cousin Daniel in Seattle. Your brother Merconin is here living with me. Please call us. Here's the number.
You can imagine that afternoon.
Yeah, I'm just freaking out, screaming upstairs because I'm like, is this real? Is this true? Like, I didn't know what to think of it, but the decision was I decided to call them, so.
There were many conversations between Seattle and Maryland, and it isn't something that happened to be Seattle. Lots of conversations in Seattle and in Maryland and in Ethiopia, and if I could go back, Selvage decided to go to Seattle. Come to Seattle, right? And this was her diary. Why don't you go ahead and read that? Sorry.
Like anybody normal, I'm nervous about the people I'm meeting. For some reason, though there was no fear in my heart, although they are complete strangers in some ways, in the back of my head, somewhere way, way back, locked up in my memory box, these people have always existed. Walking down to claim my baggage, I hear a voice, Asalafesh, in the correct pronunciation only an Ethiopian would know. I turn around, stop, and look at my cousin. His face does not ring a bell, and I can't explain it, but the memory box in just one touch opens, just a little, and it takes me back to my village in Ethiopia where a young boy is playing and chasing me and my sister. I meet my brother, this is day 2, I meet my brother for the first time in 14 years. When I get the phone call from the front desk, I wonder who could it be. The man says, your brother is here to see you in the lobby. All of a sudden, my heart starts beating fast. I become nervous with joy. As I see him sitting down in the lobby, I know who he is. He walks around me, and that hug felt vividly familiar. I mean, words can't explain how I felt. I felt like I belonged in ways that I hadn't before. That's my brother Merconin and I meeting for the first time in the lobby. The language barrier made no difference. I was in the arms of my big brother and surrounded by people who could tell me about the past that I left behind. Some can speak English better than others. Listening to the language I once spoke, there was no longer a loss, but now I hope that I can learn Amharic from the people who spoke it to me as a child. I don't think I've ever smiled for a whole day before. That's me and him. Today I realized that I'm really Ethiopian. Not only do I have the physical features of an Ethiopian, but I have the biological evidence to prove it. I'm touching, smelling, hearing, and seeing my family after 14 years. There was nothing I could ask for. I was not dreaming. This is all true. I'm really in the presence of my brother. I'm lost for words. And then this is my cousins. Yeah, that's my brother Merconin next to me, and then the rest of them are my cousins. That's my cousin Merconin, who knew my sister and I, so very well when we were little. Day 3, family in my culture is very important. When one struggles, we all struggle. Now I see and understand why my Ethiopian mother gave me up for adoption. She wanted a better life and future for my sister and me. What a strong mother she is to make a decision such as giving up your children because you don't want them to die with you in a place where there is no health care, no hospital close by. Her vision for me and Adanch was to become someone strong and healthy in the U.S., where there are so many opportunities. Merconin tells us that her dream has been to hear our voice one day, so she can have solid evidence that her last born children are alive and well taken care of. Her dreams in one 30-minute phone call became true. Surrounded by my family members who can act as translators for my mother and me, I call Ethiopia and talk with my mother. We talk and cry with joy. She knows that I have not forgotten her, and not ever, and we understood that God has answered both of our prayers. She tells me now I can live longer. My heart no longer hurts. I love you and Adonis, and I'm so happy your brother has found you. On this day, this very moment, on January 9, 2009, God has answered all of our prayers. He reunited me and my brothers and cousins and let my mother's worries and questions be answered. I'm truly thankful for this fateful event. And that's when I was talking to my mother on the phone. Picture of it.
So in terms of this journey of adoption, there are many questions asked, many questions answered. Do you want to say anything about that?
No, I mean, it was just a really emotional, like, when I came to Seattle and met my brother, it was just really emotional, and it was a lot, and I kind of didn't know how to handle all this information that I was getting, but I was really, really, really fortunate to be able to connect with my biological family.
in so many ways, birth family is never far from our thoughts in many ways. I want to talk a little bit about the reality of memories. You know, some are traumatic and painful. It's a reality that has to be acknowledged, particularly in the case of older children, and not ignored. It is a dramatic life change. It can be a trauma, even with loving birth or first families and with adopted families. Wondering about birth parents is a normal part of an adopted child's life. For some, as we've said, knowing and more and searching and reuniting is enormously important. For others, it's of mild interest. For others, it's not a goal at all. Even babies and toddlers, though, can experience emotions of loss and grief. They may not have concrete memories, but their emotional memories may be vivid. And I would just suggest to be as proactive as possible. I want to talk a little bit about ways to connect with the child's heritage and how that can strengthen the whole family. There is an ebb and flow to that, and some of you, if your children have been here for a while, you know that sometimes they're really enthusiastic about going to it, and other times they would just rather shoot you than go to a festival or whatever, and that's just a reality as well. There are a lot of ways, I think, to connect with birth families indirectly, and that can make a search easier for everyone when and if the time becomes right. For children who are abandoned or for whom search seems impossible, indirect connections can ease the sense of loss. It can be established in many ways. They don't ever take the place of the loss of the first family, of the first country, of the first heritage, but certainly when we as adopted parents show interest in and admiration of a child's original heritage, we honor the past and we honor the child's realities. Children can be sad, angry about losses due to adoption. It's part of how it goes. We just have to let them be sad. Know that the love that they have for us is not diminished by that sadness. I always suggest that people name the birth parents, even and perhaps especially if their names are unknown, and talk about them respectfully. Suggest writing letters or emails to the birth parents, and you heard an example of a cell of fetches, whether they can be delivered or not. Create drawings and artwork. Certainly connections with other adopted persons, especially adult adoptees.
Yeah, I mean, I felt like growing up, I wasn't able to connect with adopted people because there weren't that many Ethiopian adoptees. There was a lot of Asian adoptees, but I think it's really important that the kids have someone else they can talk to and relate with, so I think that's a really important aspect.
I tossed this out, National Geographic's Genographic Project, which is a database to show genetic connections through certain areas of the world, and that's particularly useful for people who have no genetic connections. It does put them somewhere in the world. I always want to say this as well, as you make decisions about contact and connection, do so with your eyes wide open, because there is an awful lot to consider. You have to do what is right for you and for your family and your child thoughtfully and honorably, and each of you may have a different idea of what that is. I think we also have to understand that our decisions affect others around the world and in years to come. There are issues around language, around economics, and economics is probably one of the biggest ones for us here in America, as generally speaking, well-educated, affluent people, used to accessibility, used to being able to get answers, used to having a fair amount of money. Education, healthcare, access to healthcare, geography, climate, these are just differences. Religion can be huge differences. The role of culture, how adoption is seen in any given country, in Ethiopia, what attitudes are towards being adopted, towards being a birth parent, towards being an adopted parent. Some languages don't even have a word for birth parent. We have, in the United States, such easy access to communication, so do our children. Countries of origin may be lagging, Ethiopia may be slightly behind in terms of access and use, but they are catching up quickly, and all of those factors can affect search. So we are separated perhaps by language, by economics, by education, by geography, culture, technology, but what do we have in common? Well, we are parents. We are parents of the same child. And we share our humanity. There's just no doubt in my mind about that. In terms of direct connections, there are many factors to consider. Whose search is it? What are the reasons for searching? What's the best timing? What about the laws? What about the resources? Searches can take many forms. They can be for just information, can be for a relationship, can be for something in between. Whose search is it anyway? Who should search? Adopted parents on behalf of their adopted children? The adoptee only? If so, at what age? The birth parents or the birth family? And these were all, again, very individual questions. I cannot give you an answer specifically. I can tell you what we felt. Statistics about search. The Young Donaldson Adoption Institute survey of Korean adoptees. 22% have searched or in the process. 34% are interested in searching. 15% are uncertain whether they're interested in searching, and 29% are not interested in searching. I think those are important statistics to look at because the reasons for searching are highly individual, highly variable, and can evolve over time. They might be to obtain medical histories. They might be to learn about relatives, especially siblings. Siblings can be very important in a search. And to learn more about the reasons for adoptive placement because sometimes we don't get the actual reasons. To fill a void, to gain a sense of closure, to share a message with birth parents, to reconnect with birth country and heritage. It's a big range. There are reasons for not searching. Concern about the adoptee's connection with the adoptive family. Feeling no need or no desire to connect with the birth family. And we have that in our own family. Your brothers have no interest, adopted from the United States, they have no interest in connecting with their birth family. They could do it in a snap. Fear of bad or difficult information about the birth family, which can be death, rape, abandonment, mental illness, prostitution, all sorts of things. Timing becomes highly individual for each family, and certainly I think the biggest reason for searching when adopted children are young, you could lose the possibility for connection if the birth family dies or moves. And that was always a risk in our mind. The biggest reason, again, for waiting until the adopted person decides him or herself to search, because the decision to search belongs to them. It's their story, it's their family, it's their right. There are certainly legal issues that are to be considered as well. You may agree with them, disagree. If your search is against the law of your child's country of origin, might it impact the possibility of other children being adopted? And this can be important. Lots of resources for search, certainly loads more exist today than did before. The big what ifs. What if the search ends in new, previously unknown information about the reasons for placement? What if it ends in rejection by the birth family? What if it ends in renewed grief and loss? What if it ends in requests or demands for money? How might you handle the issue of money or other contributions to the birth family's welfare? It's a very complicated subject. And what are the possibilities and ramifications for both the adoptive and the birth family? Another big what if the birth family contacts you? In our case, we heard from Selvich and Adanish's brother. 4% of, according to this survey, were found, Vietnamese adult adoptees were found by their birth families. It's a small statistic, it's an old statistic, but there you go. Going back to Ethiopia, we've talked about means giving back to Ethiopia. One way that I've done that is my work with Ethiopia Reads, which is working on building a reading culture in Ethiopia. I connected with it about 10, 12 years ago, and that became very important. There's a tremendous need for books in Ethiopia, where the literacy rate for the total population is about 42%. About 65% of children in rural areas don't finish primary school. And many schools have no library and very few books. So, June of 2011,
መጪውን የኢትዮጵያን ሚሌኒየም ልክ እንደ አብሮ መብላት መጠጣታችን ለለውጥ ተጋግዘን በመስራት የሀገራችንን እድገት የምናይበት ጅምር እንዲሆን የእግዚአብሔር ቅዱስ ፈቃዱ ይሁን እላለሁ። መልካም በዓል፣ መልካም ጊዜ።